Welcome to Ask the Trade Pro, a show where a couple of trade guys ramble about trade stuff. We are here to answer your questions about your HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and any other home system so you can keep your home running smoothly. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Todd. Today, Jordan and I are joined by a fellow trade pro to discuss tree care. We have Cory Craft from Northwest Landscaping. Cory, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Cory Craft. I was a tree climber in New Orleans for about 8 years and kind of fell in love with the craft, and then moved out here 3 years ago and decided to carry my arboricultural knowledge forward.
What's a tree climber?
So unlike the guys who use ladders who don't wear hard hats or anything, and no, it's arboriculture is a science, it's a sport, and it's also an art. You know, this is living, trees are living art, and being able to be the one climbing it using saddles and ropes and stuff, it's pretty exciting.
What's the tallest tree you ever climbed?
Same question I had to. Got a 200-foot redwood over there?
No, it was a 170-foot water oak, and
Wow.
right outside of New Orleans.
That's like 15 stories.
It's a huge tree. It was a huge tree, and we weren't removing it. I was literally just climbing to see if I could get to the top, so it was recreational.
It wasn't like a cat, right? You got stuck up there?
No.
I can imagine that would be pretty scary, right? Climbing trees like that, and all that's holding you is what? What's your gear look like?
Your gear is just imagine a saddle, so it hits around your waist, and then you have one rope, or you have multiple ropes, but you have one rope that's tied in above you, and you just ascend and descend the rope up and down the tree, and you can change your tie-in points and move throughout a canopy. And
So how do you get a rope above you? Who threw the rope 170 feet high?
so they make a few tools for that. They actually have a giant slingshot for really big stuff. But long story short, it's a ball. It's like what's it called, a hacky sack ball essentially, with a very thin string, and you can throw it. You can toss it really far. And then if you can't reach that, you can use a
I guess it really is a sport.
giant slingshot.
It's the hacky sack toss. All right.
So, Cory, what can you share with us that made you want to become an arborist, and how'd you get started here in Tucson? I know you mentioned that you were from elsewhere. Can you share that story with us a little bit and let us know how you came here today with Jordan and myself?
All right, so growing up in Mississippi, it's very green, lots of water, lots of rain, lots of big trees. I've just always been a nature guy. I mean, wildlife's always fascinated me. I had aquariums since I was really young. I still have aquariums. Yeah, I just graduated with a degree in geography, map making, and I was thinking of ways I could utilize that for a career that didn't involve working in an office all day. Yeah, after I graduated college, I was like, what's something I can do from the ground up? Didn't even know how to hook up a trailer, and I started as a grounds guy on a tree company, and the rest is history. I moved to climber, then crew leader, and then on my way up to now I get to count trees and do a lot of inventory stuff, and it's a good life. I feel like I have the best job in the world.
Climbing trees.
What's the main difference between Tucson and where you were?
So I always joke, I've come from the swampland to the desert. You know, obviously water is a lot more, there's a lot more of it back home in, the southeast for sure.
Wet swamps?
Yeah, but part of it for the journey for me is just sort of like learning the different types of soils. So fundamentally, tree care begins in the soil, just as all plant, landscape stuff does. But yeah, moving out here was just like a blank slate. It was so new. The biology here is so much different, and that's mainly because the soil and the solar exposure and the amount of moisture and stuff. But yeah, I wanted to climb new trees too.
You got sick of the big trees. You wanted to come climb some mesquites or palo verdes.
All
or
those nice sharp trees.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Big
truth
thorns.
to that. There's
big
a lot of truth to that.
thorns. Yeah.
Climbing saguaros?
Never done that. Never climbed a saguaro, but I have removed a few.
So quick question. I know you've pointed it out a little bit earlier, but what's the difference between an arborist and a landscaper?
Landscaping deals with pretty much anything on the ground. So if you can imagine doing beds, irrigation, smaller plants, I mean, you can some hedges can get pretty big. There becomes a point in landscaping where things become too high for just normal landscaping equipment. And I say that as in you need equipment such as climbing gear, chippers. So that's another thing that kind of separates us, is we're dealing with a lot of like tree material that's generated, and it has to be condensed, and the way it's condensed is through a chipper.
Okay. So you're an arborist then. Let's talk a little bit about being an arborist in Tucson. Obviously, we talked about you came from, was it Mississippi, Louisiana, someone that on the swamp area, stuff we don't understand.
We don't know what water is. This is
Mosquito
Tucson, right?
land.
Yeah. What's a swamp?
Yeah. The ground is not hard rock. What's wrong with you? So you're an arborist in Tucson. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about our trees. Tell us what we got to do. Let's talk a little bit about tree maintenance, how we do that in Tucson, since that's where we're at.
All right. One thing I've noticed by being here is obviously water's an issue. 9 times out of 10 when you see a tree in the landscape here, it was irrigated at some point in its development, usually in the beginning.
Even our local trees?
Well, now we got to define what a tree is. I mean, and this, I guess, is what it all comes down to, right? So there becomes a point where there are a lot of trees that can be mature and they don't exceed 10 to 15 feet. And a lot of that work can be done from the ground. That's where the lines between landscaping and arboriculture get a little fuzzy, but their biology is still the same. But so with that said, some of the plants that are the trees that are native here, such as mesquites and palo verdes and saguaros, of those 3 species, the saguaro is the long-lived plant of the ecosystem, which is unlike any other place on the planet because the plants here evolved for so long to be nursery plants to the saguaros, to get them through their adolescence, to shelter them from UV exposure. So just thinking of it that way, when you do see a mature tree in an urban landscape here in Tucson, it's probably been watered artificially for a certain part of its life.
Interesting. So, Cory, I have to ask you this. What is your most unusual or memorable tree-related story? I know you have something good. You've been doing this quite a while.
He climbed a 170-foot tree, and that's probably not even the most interesting one yet.
Well, that's memorable to us, but probably not him. He's been doing it
I climbed
years.
like an 8-foot tree.
Yeah, I'll climb a 2-foot step ladder to trim a branch, but that's about it.
I do have a few stories, but I guess one namely one, this was probably about 6 years ago in New Orleans. I was in a bucket truck. It's a 45-foot bucket truck, so I was 45 feet in the air removing.
So clearly you're not afraid of heights.
I had to get over that real quick. Which I did. I was scared. The first tree that I climbed, I was scared. I was at the top, and I was like, Cory, what are you doing? You're in the wrong business, dude. Why? But I just said, the thing about it with climbing is trust your gear. If you know your gear is solid and you know the biology of this tree, you know a union where you're tied into, it's not an unhealthy tree. You know that union has a certain amount of pressure it can hold. It does make the fear go away a little bit. So yeah.
So we were talking about this unique tree you were remembering.
Oh yeah. So I was in a 45-foot boom. It was a dead tree we were removing in this backyard. It was essentially in a field, so there wasn't a lot of stuff that could be damaged around it. But the homeowner didn't want us to just fell it over, so we had to break it down with a boom and get each piece down. But long story short, there was about 20 feet left of this tree, and there was a thunderstorm coming. And I'm in 45 feet up in the air in the middle of a field. Me and this tree, the only thing taller than me is this tree. Well, at this point, it was lower than that. But I just saw it coming, and I was like, this is the moment I'm going to die. And it wasn't. I made 2 more cuts right before the storm got there, and we went home. We had to clean up everything in the rain, but that was pretty memorable for me.
So you were a lightning rod.
Could have been.
Yeah, we have some tall ladder scary stories, but no 45-foot booms for us. We don't usually have to go that high unsecured, or we don't have to climb the roofs of our buildings by ourselves. We go upstairs.
I guess another couple questions that we have regarding we are in Tucson. So
we have a lot of questions because we know nothing about plants.
Yeah.
Like we can fix inside your home, get outside the home, and we're like, well, it's just dirt.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the common mistakes you see homeowners or businesses, because I imagine you work in both, do you see them make when it comes to the tree care and our climate here in Tucson?
I'd say the number one thing I noticed that affects the urban forest of Tucson is probably misusing irrigation. So essentially not weaning trees off irrigation and just pulling it because whatever building or homeowner doesn't have the resource anymore wants to pay for that. So I see a lot of mature trees that have suffered because of that human decision. Another thing I notice here is a lot of people are homeowners specifically, who may not know too much about their trees. They'll kind of they'll show me a pest in a picture or tell me to come look at a tree and it's got all these bite marks on it. So pests are 9 times out of 10 a secondary thing to an environmental stressor. So it's not like locusts, the pests just come and destroy trees around them. It's more so a tree is weak because it has an immune system just like us, but it's weak and something else in the environment is wrong. So thus, that's when pests come into the picture.
So the pests are just a symptom of something else going on.
Well said.
Oh, that's
What
interesting.
are some of the pests that we have here in our trees?
There's a lot of hortworms, which are just a little caterpillar version of some butterflies. And a lot of those, especially on like Texas ebony trees, they will lay their eggs, the caterpillar will eat the plant, and then they'll go on to their next part of the life cycle. So at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about that unless you know exactly when the eggs are laid, know exactly how to find them, pull it off at the right time before they turn to caterpillars. So that's another thing. A lot of pests are just cyclical or like seasonal.
And that's natural? Like that's supposed to happen?
Yes, that's
a healthy tree will just survive.
Yes, and especially with the Texas ebony and the hornworms, that's a specific relationship there.
So a lot of these trees have their own specific pests, like mesquite trees, palo verdes. Do they have any pests that?
Typically, I mean, you see some termites sometimes in palo verdes, but that's usually a secondary issue. But the other one I was going to say is acacia trees. So acacias a lot of them have really bad genetics. And what I mean by that is when you go buy an acacia tree at a store, 9 times out of 10 it's a hybrid and it's not a natural. It's usually selected for some purpose, for some aesthetic reason, or it doesn't grow too big, or there's
like crossbred or inbred or something.
tons of those, just in the plant world in general, but specifically with acacias, a lot of them have bad genetics, but essentially they just have a lot of like outer bark issues. So when you see like a lot of scalding or like scraping, it almost looks like an animal came and scraped the trunk of the tree. 9 times out of 10, if that's how you describe your tree's issue, it's probably because it was a bad pick of the
So
the
we had no
genetic
idea what
lottery.
we were doing. We just bought the cheap landscape, and the guy was like, "That one's pretty. We'll take it."
I think you should just be very intentional about which species you select, when you plant it, what species, and how far it is away from structures. And if you can do those 3 things, you're going to have a much better success with having a mature tree on your property.
We all need an arborist to teach us that because I had no idea about most of that. We know about planting them in the right locations because they interfere with our pipes too.
Yeah.
We go to so many drains where they've grown, the roots have grown into them, filled them in. And we're like, well,
yeah, I
you
bet.
put the tree right where your sewer is, so what do you expect?
Yeah, and it's common here that every drain has a big mesquite tree that goes into it. So that's another good question regarding trees. I would imagine some trees' root systems are more invasive than others. I know here
Oleanders?
Oleanders, yeah, they tend to grow into the sewer systems, and it seems like you can't kill them either, no matter what. If any
I had
little water,
oleanders.
they
I
survive.
had oleanders that were like half dead, and they had some invasive species on them, and we found the only reason we got them out was the backhoe and like a lot of work. Like it was a problem.
I'd say oleanders are bad ones, and so are palo verdes. You might not think it, but I've seen them, and we had to do a lot of root
that's
pruning for
our
them.
special tree in Tucson, right? We're about to have a Palo Verde festival.
I'm excited about it, man.
Love those trees. Never mind. They're my favorite. But Palo Verdes they have a bad root system, you said?
Well, not a bad root system, but they're really great at seeking out water.
It's the desert. That makes sense.
Yeah,
It tracks.
which is
Yeah,
why
so
you see
it
a lot.
follows the little crack in the pipe and
So
breaks
we
right
just install a
into it.
drinking fountain for it.
This is a good transition into something I want to discuss. There's a cost to every tree, whether you have a pool and its leaves are getting on the pool, or it's destroying your septic system. So there's always a cost, but that's where the benefits come in, I think. And a tree is worth it 9 times out of 10. So I can't. I'm
You
sure-
are an arborist. You should love trees. We get that. The Palo Verde, like there's a Palo Verde festival coming up called the Bloom Festival. It's a big thing they're doing here now. There's just started it, and and they're beautiful. They want everyone to come see the yellow blooms of the Palo Verde, like the cherry blossoms.
Yeah.
Right? And then, but I always think of it from the fact that my car's covered in them every day, and I have to go wash it again.
Right.
So like you said, there's a cost. Like they look beautiful, and now I got to go sweep.
And they make a mess. Yeah.
So
That is another thing about the environment here versus back home in the South, is that there's a lot less tree pollen. I know if you've spent your whole life here with the dust and the tree pollen here, of course, it's still allergies either way, but the amount of tree pollens that are in the air is probably 30% of what it is back east. So,
Oh, really?
So a lot of people move out here for respiratory issues.
yeah, they used to for tuberculosis and breathing and all that stuff. So what you're saying is nobody can complain about their allergies anymore out here?
Kinda, yeah. I'm like, y'all haven't
You're like,
seen
come
it."
back
Yeah.
home with me. We'll see what this looks like. All right.
Same with mosquitoes, though. I've heard people here, oh my gosh, mosquitoes are so bad. I'm like, y'all know nothing.
That's only for 2 months of the year. how does monsoon season affect your trees? I know from my experience, we get a lot of rapid growth. Like all of a sudden they were there and then they warm up, I guess, to the water. Like they're ready for it and they just blow up. And next thing you know, your tree's like twice the size or falling over or cracking or something like that. Like,
So a lot of the trees here in Tucson, they only get water one time of the year, and that's during monsoon season. So every tree has some form of internal clock that we can't understand, but it knows when it's coming, it knows how long the season lasts, and it knows when it's over. But one thing about monsoon is you want to check your trees for like dead wood, hazardous dead wood. So anything that could hurt someone or destroy property, that's always the number one thing with trees. So preparing your home for monsoon would include getting all the dead wood out of your trees.
how can you tell what's dead? So I do this, like Tyler and I were talking about this the other day because I didn't know a bush, and he's like, look, you just hack this thing down to the root and it grows back, and it's essentially a weed. So we're like, oh yeah, I guess that bush does that. But sometimes I'm looking at the tree and I'm like, I don't like that limb, but I don't know if that's dead wood or live wood or whether it's going to hurt it if I hack too much off that wood. So how can we kind of tell that?
That's a good question. So there's called the snap test, where you take the tip of a tree and you snap it. And if there's a snap, there's no water in it, it's dead. Obviously, you can't do that to a bigger piece. But here out in the desert, a lot of trees do naturally lose their leaves and look dead, but they're not. And they will. So the tissue isn't actually dead sometimes. So it is a little bit harder to do that here. But with that said, anytime you see any sort of insect activity or major discoloration, it's usually or you can just hire me to come out and have a look. I'll tell you.
We're called Ask the Trade Pros, right? We always recommend a pro. Like if you don't know what you're doing, call somebody that does. Otherwise, you're going to be buying a new tree. And obviously, we just learned we don't know how to pick our own acacia trees, so we probably should be calling an expert way more often than we are.
So I guess a question that I have regarding watering. So, and this is my personal experience.
Too much, too little.
Exactly, too much, too little. So I had a system. I bought the house a few years ago, and it had just a basic, irrigation controller. It was set to, and at the time it had baby mesquite trees and a couple other bushes. I have no idea what they are. I'm not the arborist or the tree person. That's why you're here. But long story short, so it was set to water every other day for a certain period of time. I want to say 2 hours. So I don't know anything about water or anything like that. So I bought, I think it's pronounced ratio system, which is a smart watering device for your irrigation. It knows the region, you put in your zip code, and it knows the soil, or it supposedly knows all of this.
Senses rainfall and things like that.
Exactly. So it will skip watering, add watering if it's really hot. But one thing I did notice is it seems like it waters way less than what my previous system did, like to the point where even during the summer when it was...
Are your plants still alive though?
They're still alive, but even during the summer, like every 10 days it would water for my mesquite trees, and it got to the point where the leaves started looking yellow, like it was getting burnt or something. So I went in there, would manually water, occasionally when I would remember, thinking every 10 days watering? That doesn't make sense.
Did that improve the health of the tree?
It did, yeah, it did. So one time I even set it to run for 16 hours just to soak it. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm hurting it. I don't know.
I mean, every tree's different, and every location is different too. But all I was going to say is part of it is less is more with watering. And I think your smart system took that too far. Yeah. But, at some point, assume that trees have been misplanted. So 80% of the trees here in Tucson, not pointing any fingers, but are misplanted. That's in the world.
Explain that.
To explain that is when you go to a store and you buy a tree in a pot, it can be anywhere from, the tree can be a year old to 5 years old, depending. But either way, it's a tree that's been growing in a circular pot, cylindrical pot for its entire life. And over time, the roots circle the pot, searching for...
we're on a podcast, so he's going in a spiral, guys.
Oh, yeah.
You want to know
you
what
guys couldn't see that? What kind of podcast is this? But essentially, the roots are just spiraling. And what people do, misplanting, is when they take this plant out of its original pot and place it into the ground, they don't disturb the roots at all. So it goes into the ground with a spiral structure. And over time, for 5, 10, 15 years, it may not negatively affect the plant. But what will happen is once the tree gets to a certain maturity and these roots get big enough, underground, they'll begin to cross each other and strangle each other. So any mature tree you see, and there's like just random die-offs in the canopy, which I've seen tons of that in Tucson, it's typically because it was misplanted. And the the solution to that is when you're planting trees, when you take them out of the pot, you can remove, no matter how old this tree is, if it's within a 1 to 10 range, you can take off 30 to 40% of the root structure. And I think people are scared to do that when they plant trees, but it won't be a problem for another 20 years. But you do see a lot of that. And another way to see that at your home is you can see some girdled roots are sometimes a tree's girdled roots are so bad, there's a lot of surface exposure. So you'll actually see, if you ever see roots crossing each other on trees, it's because, and it might be fine, a lot of trees live their whole lives that way, but if you can and it's small enough, remove the root that's crossing.
The higher or lower one, does it matter?
Let me look at it first.
Go on, experts.
But no, always
just get out there with the hacksaw.
Typically the higher one, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, so I never knew this. So you break the roots off, or you could try to spread them out too?
Yeah, the best thing to do is just with a flathead shovel, just break the bottom 20% off if a foot. I'm doing my hands in a motion right now. If it's a foot, take off 20% of that,
okay,
and then the rest just disturb it. Then you can put it in the ground.
Interesting.
So when you take it out of the pot, shake it up, pull those roots, get them mixed up, so they're not running around in a circle.
Exactly.
Makes sense. I learned something new because I would have never.
And also
have
that your smart water is not as smart as you thought it was.
Yeah.
It's like half smart.
Well, at least I was smart enough to ask
you
the
would've
question, right?
Well, like you said earlier, you would have overwatered it.
Yeah.
It's underwater.
Hey.
Between the two of you, you worked it out.
Yeah. Smart question, and got a smart answer.
And that does not go for all other plants. Trees specifically can take that type of root destruction at that point in their lives, but
Bushes
not every
and stuff,
plant.
maybe not.
Yeah,
or
that's a
what do
different.
they call seasonals, or what are those called?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, bougainvillea, is that how you say it?
Your weed?
Yeah,
that's your weed?
That's what he yelled at me for at our office. One day he comes and I hacked it all the way down. It was nothing but a couple stumps.
There's no
like
leaves
this.
on it at all. Like it was just. I was like, "Why are you gonna take the stump out?" He's like, "No, it'll grow back. It's a weed."
Did it come back?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it came back huge.
Better than ever, huh?
Yeah, it came back huge.
Which tells you just a weed. If it grows with from a stump, it's a weed.
And no water too.
I actually, for a client recently, she had probably a 30-year-old mesquite tree. She was tired of it being so big, and this is not proper arboricultural practices, but if you want the homeowner, do what they want to do, it's their tree. So we essentially cut the top of the tree off, and it sprout back 100%. So she got what she wanted, but anytime you try to pullard is the word, but if you ever try to do that to a tree, there's no guarantee that it'll come back, and some species do better than others.
And the point was that to try to make it taller, make it grow up taller. Like I see a lot of sculpting of trees where, like, I know in my neighborhood they'll be in monsoon season, they're hanging over the parking spaces, the roadway. So they're trying to cut them so that they grow up or different directions. Is that what that part?
So structurally pruning a tree so it stays out of building clearance issues, that's one thing. So you can train trees to grow certain ways, but this specific thing is called pollarding, and I think it started in France or something. But long story short, it's for fruit trees. Instead of having big, long, strong branches, they cut them all so it would produce more fruit. So there was more apical growth points. So it pretty much makes the tree much denser. So it removes big leads, is what we call them, and it makes it more manageable too. So for this homeowner, she can now get on her little ladder with the hedger and
So that
trim
works
her
for
tree.
lemon trees, orange trees. Like if we want more fruit out of our trees, that's what we do to them.
I am no citrus expert, but talk about bad genetics. Those trees are they break all the laws of trees. They have to be pruned special ways, special nutrients. That is a whole different ballgame.
They're very entitled trees. Huh?
Yeah.
So, Cory, we like trees in our urban areas, the shade, the plants. Tell us a little bit about the benefits of having trees, whether they're new plants, old growth, the different benefits of having trees in our urban spaces, because you've talked about urban forest or urban growths.
So urban forestry is just a term that just describes all the trees in a city. So that includes parks, people's backyard, people's front yard, along roadways, just any tree that is encompassed in the municipal area. But with that said, their benefits, obviously, like you said, shade here in the desert is a big deal. Solar exposure is intense, and if you're sitting under a shade in Tucson,
That's a polite way to say it. Solar exposure.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
we get sunburned in 5 minutes flat.
Yes, but trees help with that, obviously. Secondly, with that same function, they can reduce your cooling cost of your home dramatically. I've heard somewhere around 30 to 35% in some cases if you have a proper tree, proper species planted, the proper location away from your home.
And as we've learned already, we need you for that because we have no clue what we're we're doing.
And then the last thing I was going to touch on is the psychological benefits. I think that's something we don't think about very often, where maybe we take plants in our landscapes for granted, but when we see patterns and we see greens and we see, it's essentially life. Our brains evolved for millions of years to see that and think resource. Like, it's good for our brains, especially in our world where a lot of us work inside a lot of the times, and especially outside your home. The benefits of that you can't even measure.
Yes, we see it in spring here when everyone in Tucson gets shocked that there's yellow or purple or whatever the flowers are growing. Or I remember one time I was driving back in the monsoon season. I looked up at the mountains because it'd been pouring for like weeks. It was super wet season, and they looked like Hawaii. Like, it was green. And I'm like, wait, we have trees on the mountains? Usually they're just brown.
Right. And you can tell the shade differences here after a rain. You can see things brighten up a little bit. So
Yeah, makes me feel happy even sitting here just looking at this fake
Our fake podcast tree?
Yeah, our
I
fake
was
tree
going to
right
test
here.
y'all and see if y'all knew if that was fake or not. Yeah, but you got it.
Yeah, plants. I mean, yeah, and oxygen and air, and they just make you feel better. So.
And there's two other points I like to make about trees and how awesome they are. One is, obviously, we live in a planet that has a climate, and our urban areas are, typically concrete. And the only thing that's not concrete is our landscapes. And 80% of our landscapes, if it's a healthy city, are trees, well-maintained trees. So that obviously has an effect there. But one thing I also wanted to mention too, living in New Orleans for the time that I did, is I noticed there was a lot of inner city kids that couldn't really get out of the city very often, especially younger kids. But sometimes a person's first exposure to nature is a tree in their city or at their park or outside their home. And it's their first connection to seeing like a squirrel. It's not always about the tree, it's about the ecosystem, but a tree is just the center of that.
That's,
So,
Makes sense.
yeah, birds.
kids will stay out of trouble if there's more trees to see.
We're gonna sell that idea. All we need is more trees.
Here you don't see squirrels. You see a bush or a tree,
birds.
and then there's a
Lizards.
there's a rattlesnake next to it.
There's birds. We have birds in the trees. We have rodents. They're not squirrels, but
Yeah, trees here for birds. I mean, we got Davis Mountain. There's a bunch of big, large eucalyptus out there, and I mean, each one has a large predatory bird that lives there. So I mean, we just don't even know the costs. It's hard to measure that,
the benefits to having tall trees or trees. Now, you mentioned something earlier I wanted to come back to now that you're talking about the trees. You said something about how we raise all our trees wrong and never get them off water right, or something, or how we grow a mature tree. I know Todd was talking about that on his house where he's watering these baby trees he has. So maybe touch base a little bit on how we evolve a tree so we don't just replant every 5 years because we killed it.
Well, my goal is to always for the long-term health of the tree and service of people. But ultimately, knowing the history of a tree is very important. So, if you just moved into a home and you have a mature tree, there may be no record of how it was watered, how it was pruned, what pests it had in the past. So I think just knowing as much as you can about your tree goes a long way. So living in New Orleans where there's a lot of large 400-plus-year-old live oaks, I felt like Sherlock Holmes asking people, okay, who moved here? Did you live down the street here too? What did this tree look like 20 years ago? Oh, you've lived here for 30? Tell me about this tree. So part of it is that it's the human story that connects it. And I just got on a tangent and forgot what I was talking about.
Talking about how to raise a tree from young age to old age without killing it.
This sounds kind of nerdy, but document your tree. Like, I will come to your home for free and create a little digital database of this tree. And we can timestamp it with a photo, some notes. And one day you may call me in 5 years and be like, Cory, you still got that log about my tree? I'll be like, sure do, and that can go a long way. But more of like an instant thing you can do, just learn the species of tree it is, because they are all different, and I think a lot of trees and just plants in general get the treatment, oh, that's a plant, they all need this kind of water, but every tree is so specific.
That's what you were doing to yours, Todd, right?
Yeah.
Just random tree needs random water.
Random tree, random water.
And mesquites are resilient. That's one reason why they've evolved here for forever. So those are resilient. So they can take all the Chat GPT's irrigation, and then they can take these different stressors most of the time. But when a tree gets bigger and more mature, the consequences go up because it can damage your home. Or
So
it
don't
could hurt
water the
someone.
tree once it ages.
You just tap on the bark and just ask it what it wants.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But nothing, just being educated about your trees
talk
is
to your
important.
plants, Todd?
Yeah. Knock on it. How much water do you want? and if it sounds hollow, then you give it water, right?
yeah.
If it falls over, you forgot to water it too much.
It says, help me water it. Hope that answered your question, though. It's difficult. It's complicated.
That's why you hire a professional, right?
That's why you're an arborist and we are not. lot.
You want professional results, you contact the right person.
Yeah, so it makes a difference. It sounds like people could really need to ask where they're putting the tree, how they're putting the tree, and all that stuff. Not just assume, like you said, that any tree goes anywhere with any amount of water, any given time. Why do they keep dying in my front yard?
The soil here also is what's the caliche? Is that right? So there's large rocks in the soil here essentially. So a lot of trees are planted in what's seemingly like a pot that's cut out of rock, so it can't expand. So some of these trees that are old and it's not getting any bigger, that's why, because it's not in the actual soil that it can spread its roots. And same goes for like islands in the middle of home HOAs and residential areas, and even on the side of the street. Roots are always trapped for the most part.
Do those trees, because we know it from sewers, are certain trees better at, like you said, Palo Verdes, and some other trees better at just breaking through that?
I actually don't know. I know that some are just better at seeking water, so they just build more of a root mass, but I'm not sure if one has a sword and it finds it and can cut it. I don't know what it looks like down there. We don't have that technology yet.
Sharper roots, it's got a drill built into its root system.
If y'all find that tree, come find me.
Right? That's a very valuable tree.
I did want to mention one thing about just something to keep an eye on your tree as far as being an owner of a tree on your property. So when we get monsoon winds, they blow fast. So when you have a microburst, if your tree is not thinned properly, it'll almost act as a sail. So it'll take the wind and put a lot of pressure on the trunk of the tree where it shouldn't put as much pressure because it's so dense. That means there's dead wood or it's just too dense. Wind is not flowing through it. So properly thinning it out once every couple of years really goes a long way, especially if it's a large mature tree.
So thinning it out means like the canopy, right? You don't want it to be too dense on top. You want to cut branches in between and let breezes and air blow through.
Right, and to add to that point, every tree in nature evolved for millions of years, so humans didn't prune them. They grew naturally and they were fine. Well, in our urban environments, they are now in the human environment, so we have to keep them off buildings and people can walk and cars park. So we changed their biology a little bit in that way. But with that said, reducing the amount of wind force that can hit it could really save your tree if a microburst were to get
Yeah, we see it all the time. Every microburst, you drive through a neighborhood, walls knocked down, trees laying in them, it rips the trees right up from the ground.
So there's a pattern. Is that something we do, or is there actually like a pattern to that thinning? I'm just picturing like a haircut. Maybe they cut. You cut every third leaf or something. I don't know.
There's a specific science to that, and I can show you. I can bring some literature next time. But yeah, and really, you're just thinning it out. You're just where there's two branches that are really close together. Sometimes it's more beneficial to take one out, especially when it comes to certain species. So not all species need to be thin. Like Aleppo pines or southwestern pines, they don't need any they'll naturally thin themselves out. But things like
thin themselves out?
Yeah.
Just shed like in the right spots because they don't want to be thick, or?
Well, a lot of pines just figured it out. They just, at some point, they're like, okay, well, I don't need this branch anymore. Lets it die, lets it break off, and keeps going. But a lot of trees don't have that same understanding of
So pines are the smart ones, essentially.
Is that the smart trees?
I'd say they're pretty smart. Aleppo pines do pretty well here.
What does a Aleppo pine even look like?
It's like, they look
That's
just
the
like the
arborist.
southwestern pine. They're
like
not
the
native
southwestern.
here in Tucson, but they are native in Arizona.
Are they?
Yeah, but they do pretty well here.
I cannot tell your pines apart. I mean, I know what mesquite and Palo Verde look like, and I know what a pine tree looks like generally, and I guess there's a white coated bark or something on some pines, or maybe that's a different kind of tree.
They have the new Palo Blancos. Have y'all seen those? They're Palo Verdes, but they have white bark.
Yeah, I've seen
That's
those.
a very recent cultivar. They're beautiful when they're young. I've never seen a mature one, but
Is this the new like hybrid that they make?
yeah.
Interesting.
And then they have the Palo Verdes that how they get the flowers like I have around my house, and then the ones like my parents have just drop all those whatever they are leaves or
Seed pods, the
Yeah.
little legumes.
yeah.
Your Palo Verdes don't?
No, they just get yellow flowers and that's it.
Well, where's the yellow flowers go?
Well, they drop, but not they don't make a mess like the other Palo Verdes that drop all the. Same thing with mesquites at my parents'
mesquites have
house.
the seeds, and
They
always
get the
have seed
beans.
buckets, yeah.
My mesquites, they don't grow beans.
Is that because they're too young, or?
Interesting thing about beans, or legumes. So technically, mesquites and Palo Verdes, they're in the
Legumes are in the bean
Topsis
factory.
family,
I
but
eat
they're
my
actually
vegetables.
nitrogen fixing. So most trees in the world don't create their own nitrogen. You lose their leaves and it'll slowly build up. But mesquites and Palo Verdes, they actually build a soil wherever you plant them. So if you actually have a little area in your yard where you can leave the leaves, you'll just notice a lot more biological activity and wildlife because it's actually putting nutrients into the soil for itself and for other plants.
Well, unfortunately for me, I live in an HOA, so they don't like seeing any of that.
So we don't want
You get a letter
Well,
in
no, you
your
bring an
mailbox.
arborist out and say, this is natural, healthy way. You are killing my plants. This is
Yeah.
unacceptable. Right?
I'm not paying this fine. My arborist
My
said
arborist,
to
my
leave
arborist said
this.
no fines on the trees. Yeah, this is for the health of it, right?
Oh, something else you can do for your mature trees is do a deep root fertilization. You don't have to do it every year, but a lot of the soil here is stripped of nutrients. There's not a lot of ions because it's so dry. And so essentially what it does is you use a probe and you go a foot into the ground through the drip line of the entire tree, which means you just pretty much punch holes in the ground all the way around the tree, and you're putting water and, nitrogen, phosphorus.
You fill the
Potassium.
holes with something afterwards, or you just punch the holes?
It's like a gun. It's got a trigger, and you just push it in and come up.
it's an
move to the
injection?
next- Yeah, it's an injection. But especially if you have some really big, old, mature trees, they can really go a long way with just one of those. But I've seen that turn trees around also.
Interesting.
Didn't even know that.
Well, Cory, if our listeners want to know more about tree care or Northwest landscaping, how can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Coral Cowboy. That's CORAL.COWBOY. Or they can just give me a call or email me at cory.craft@nwlandscaping.com.
Thank you, Cory. It's been a very interesting session.
This was fun, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Ask the Trade Pros. We release new episodes every other Tuesday, so be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a question you would like us to answer on the show, please leave us a voicemail or an email, and we may feature your question in an upcoming episode. That information is in the show notes. This podcast is sponsored by the good folks at Done Right Services. As always, thank you for your support.